We are now transitioning to our first panel discussion, and we have a distinguished panel ready to engage with us. The topic we are delving into is Dismantling the Unseen Barrier, the challenges to implementing DEI programs. Now, this discussion will explore the intricate obstacles that organizations face in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the innovative solutions that can drive meaningful change. But before we dive into this invigorating discussion, allow me to introduce you to our remarkable panel. Our first panelist is Ms. Parvati Menon. She combines deep research on exponential leadership mindsets with practical experience in building ventures. As principal learning partner with Harvard Business Publishing, she designs customized leadership learning journeys. Parvati founded Innovation Alchemy Consulting and Fresh Harvest Private Limited, focusing on innovation and sustainable agriculture. She is a certified senior moderator for leadership learning, impacting leaders globally. She chairs the board for the School for Social Entrepreneurs, India, and serves on the board of National Peroxide Limited. Hi, Parvati. Welcome to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Wonderful to be on the panel. Thank you, Andy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to IVS Ranganath, an award-winning HR leader with over 20 years of experience, currently heading HR at Shriram Bioseed Genetics. He excels in strategic alignment, talent engagement, and organizational development across India. Recognized as a top 100 HR leader, IVS is dedicated to creating empowering work environments and contributing to community development. Hi, IVS.
Hi, very good morning to all of you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right. Next, we have Dr. Kiranmai Pendyala, an esteemed HR leader and academic, formerly head of HR at Intercontinental Exchange India, and a governing body member for various universities. She excels in global HR operations and change management, an accomplished author and international examiner. Dr. Kiranmai combines her academic expertise with extensive organizational experience. Once again, Dr. Kiranmai, thank you for joining us and welcome to the virtual stage today.
Pleasure to be here. Morning, everyone.
All right. Our moderator for today is Dr. Soumya Bhatgayan, Vice President of HR Business Strategy at Gold Star Jewelry Private Limited. With over 20 years in HR and a PhD in e-commerce, she brings deep expertise in organizational transformation and digital initiatives. Dr. Soumya is an educator, mentor, and a world record holder, I'm told. Dr. Soumya, the stage is yours. Thank you once again, and have a fantastic panel discussion.
Thank you, Andy, for such a beautiful introduction to all of you. Welcome to my fellow panel members. Lovely to see you all on this Friday morning. Thank you for taking out time and engaging in this discussion that we have today. I have two beautiful women, and for the diversity, we have Ranga here with us. So thank you, Priya. So what a wonderful panel. I have known few of them through panels, through LinkedIn, through various forums. So thank you for meeting again here, Ithirali. And this is something that the cause is something that I personally associate with. So setting the pace and the context for today, I take real life examples. So I am wearing this watch, and I was wearing it on my right hand. And my niece said, Mommy, why are you wearing it on your right hand? I said, because I'm wearing the other stuff on my left hand. She said, aren't women supposed to wear it on the left hand? I said, wow, it never occurred to me. But thank you, the kind of mindset biases that we had. The second thing that happened with me was while I was at the airport. And at the airport, it so happens that we go with a sense of entitlement. हवाई जहाज में जाना है भाई, पैसे खर्च किए तो airport की सारी सुविधाएं हम लेंगे. So when we do that, what happens is there were porters helping others, and then there was this man standing there with just a small suitcase that was a cabin luggage. But because the person was traveling business, the sense of entitlement was, hey, I need a porter to pick this up. I will not touch my luggage. These things, also come in as a behavioral pattern from our day-to-day lives. And diversity today is not just based on the gender, caste, creed, or religion, but it is also extending beyond the abilities, disabilities, but more from the thought line. So setting this as our talking theme today, in no particular order, I would love to have your thoughts on, what are the biases that you have encountered in putting forth the diversity and inclusion initiative in your respective organization. Let's bring in real life examples. Over to you all speakers. In no particular order, let's give the gentleman the first chance, क्योंकि वो एक मूवी में बोला था ना कि बाथरूम की लाइन के अलावा भी कहीं पर हम खड़े हो सकते हैं आगे. So over to you, Ranga.
Okay, thank you very much for having such a wonderful panel, and happy to be part of diversity here. Good to see, 3 female, 1 gentleman. Thank you very much. So I think in my context, in my perspective, first of all, why diversity and inclusion is required in the current organization. People are talking about, I think we all know that maybe last 5 years, a lot of buzz is happening, DEI. Actually, first of all, every organization has this impact. They want to create as one of the organizational culture as a part of ethos of DEI. See, in my perspective, I think why diversity inclusion required, I think create a robust talent pipeline for a key sustainable index. That's one of the topmost priority, irrespective of any organization. That's my view. Number 2, create a positive impact on organizational effectiveness. Number 3, increase the productivity and retention. Having said that, I think we all agree that these are all very good to know, good to see that. But really, in the real-time impact, of course, I'll share some of the real-time examples also. Having this in HR, HR scope and HR strategy, but when it comes to the practical implementation, so when I go and ask my sales head, hey boss, diversity is one of the topmost pillar in this area agenda. So out of 6 territory sales manager, I want to hire you. I want to bring 2 females in the organization. Would you like to accept? Ranga, it's very good, but having female in my team, again, they need to travel across remote areas and this kind of blah, 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 I think there are so many says why they want to say no to them. Okay. That's the one biggest hindrance, even though people are accepting the fact that I want to have a diversity, but when it comes to individual to implement, there's a big question mark. How can I manage? That's number 1. I think that's why I always say that ensuring top-down commitment is most important. Number 1. Number 2, the commitment and conviction from the leadership is most important. For example, when I'm hiring in a campus hiring, I ensured that, I told my team members, even I told entire leadership team also, out of 8 ETs we need to hire, I want to have a 50% diversity in the hiring system. Okay, even though there is a lot of barriers, people say that, again, if you hire the people in sales and marketing, it may be difficult for them to go in different locations. But we insisted that people should have. Having said that, after putting those people into, having people into their female team members in the team, believe me, honestly, after 6 months, one of the journal business manager came back to me, sir, I think initially I have an apprehension about the female working in the field, but having 2 female members in my team, they're really fantastic. They're doing fantastic job. I think that's why I said the mindset. So people has to change the mindset. Let me accept the fact that I want to have a gender in my team. That's the number 1. last but not least, I think, addressing the structural barriers. That's the reason, see, for example, there is a 10 positions I want to hire. Out of 10 positions, I told my team members, if you're sharing the profiles around 5 to 6, ensure that 50% of the profiles are female gender diversity. So that at least you can't say no to, all females at a time, even though they're filling as per the job specifications kind of thing. I think, we have everyone wants to have a diversity, but when it comes to personal, people always have apprehensions. I think, this is my opening remark to, to make a statement now.
Ranga.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree, Ranga. In fact, I tell people, especially, B school graduates and others, that when you want to go for a job, stop thinking of yourself as a gender. Professionals and friendships don't have genders. You are a professional and so be it. So wonderful thoughts there, Ranga. I would want Parvati to take it forward if, if that's all right with you, Parvati.
Certainly, certainly. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on the panel with such esteemed and accomplished leaders. It's such a delight to be able to hear these perspectives and thoughts. Just building on what Ranga was sharing, I think the example that you've shared is such a brilliant one, because what it demonstrates is that one of the big reasons that there is a barrier to real inclusion is not because people don't want to include, because we don't have enough role models. Like that example you provided, somebody was open enough, you were able to convince them, they took on 2 women leaders, did really well. Now he's a converted champion. And he's willing to say, well, this was such a fantastic idea. So I'm sure if 10 more people were to go to him, he would tell them, you must, because I have had personal example. The moment we bring in a personal reference point of change, of inclusion having impacted you, those leaders who have opened themselves to it and have gone out of their way to try it and pilot it and experiment with it have become fantastic champions of it. So I feel the biggest barrier to this is not intent, it is awareness. It's the fact that we don't have enough role models of being able to do that. And I'm reminded of a fantastic book that was written by Harvard business professor Francis Fry and Anne Morris. And in this particular book, it's called Unleashed: The Unapologetic Leader's Guide to Empowering Everyone. It was a book on inclusion, right? And they were reviewing what is happening in the space of inclusion. As we all know, you've been talking about it right now as well. Women, inclusion is not just women, it's not gender diversity, right? Even in women, there are so many challenges. Women, who are, like, for example, somebody was telling me about an example of somebody who said in an interview and said, so, are you married? Are you planning to have children? That question is very intrusive. I mean, they're not allowed to anymore in today's day and age ask that, because it reflects that you might think of that being a challenge. So we have diversity just from a gender perspective. But at the other spectrum, we have also neurodivergent challenges where we have a lot of men and women on a spectrum of autism where the neurodivergence is very, very far on the... So it's not like they are autistic people, but they are people with ADHD, for example. Even ADHD, the ability of a team member to concentrate on a task for long periods of time and if it's not there, is a little bit of a challenge for a team. For a leader who's not open to that and empathetic, he will say the person is not being able to concentrate and get things done. But the fact is that that person has ADHD and it is on the spectrum of a diversity challenge, right? Once you know that there is a challenge, most human beings, in my experience, I would say, and I'm sure research, corroborates that as well. Once we know, we have the ability to include. But if I didn't know, I'm not aware, I've never experienced it, I don't. So I feel the biggest job all of us have as leaders in the space, especially in diversity, to amp up the inclusion of a variety of diversity into the organization is to constantly be looking to create examples, to bring those examples in, maybe role model, maybe bring in experts to be able to have those conversations. Just listening to Sumit just now in the inaugural speech, I was thinking to myself how much he would have encountered as someone with such a lot of capability, but working in a world which sort of had not experienced that before. Last weekend, I had this opportunity to watch this fantastic film called Chandu Champion. It was an example of a Paralympic athlete who won a gold. We didn't even know him in our history. Or the weekend before that, I saw Shrikant, a visually impaired leader who built such a fantastic business. So as we see in the ecosystem, the awareness levels are going up, the ability to be able to appreciate is going up. And I feel that's the key. The more all of us are aware, the more all of us are talking about it and willing to agree that there is great value in it, the more we can start harnessing it. And I'll just close with one final point, my opening remarks, which is that, and I want to go back to Sumit's point earlier, there is value, there is business value in diversity. Diversity brings in more innovation, more creativity, more empathy into the team the moment you have a team member who needs more support inside the organization. And all of that is good for business because it directly leads to the organization's ability to have business performance. And there is enough research to prove that.
Absolutely. Wonderful points there by Ranga and Parvati. Ranga bringing in the organizational culture and Parvati, putting in specific points as to, setting role models, leading by examples, and how you can bring in that culture. And that's so relevant because when I wanted to include diversity in gems and jewelry, ours was the first company. And, and we come from a very traditional mindset. So the leadership buy-in was something that ye kaise hoga, wherein 80% of my workforce is are the blue collar bench workers, and then they had their own language and lingos and the perspective at which they look at the Kinners and the others, and they have their own intonation. So, but when we sensitize the entire organization towards it, the culture was so embracing to everyone that rather than being embarrassment, it became an all-inclusive culture. And that's where I think we earned the brownie points. Another third perspective I would really love to hear from Kiran Mai. What are your thoughts on this as an opening remark? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranga and Parvati. It's fascinating to hear your inputs and insights. But Soumya, I also want to point out, I always wear my watch on my right hand. So since you started with it. Now, why are we even referring to these in terms of biases? Because I think the key word, as several of my co-panelists have mentioned, mindset. It's a social conditioning and the mindset which leads to these biases as we talk about, be it against women or for women, or be it about physically challenged individuals and so on and so forth. So biases exist. I think the way each one of us have to start looking at is the unconscious bias which continues to be among all of us, including each one of us. But the moment we recognize, as Parvati mentioned, it's about identifying and constant awareness, which is going to slowly but surely move us towards the end of the dark tunnel where the light comes in. So while we do see instances, today we are talking about not just women, but it could be anyone who is underprivileged in a given economy or a society. So organizations like ours typically look at diversity. Largely, the first item which comes to the fore is women, because it's obvious, it's visible, and you're going to look at, men and women. You have so many across the globe. The globe is not, unequal per se. You have equal number of men and women. In some pockets, in some geographies today, we do hear that there are fewer women. And hence, we have stories now emanating in socio-dynamics where it says, Punjab now doesn't have as many women as it used to. And hence, the farmers and other communities, they do need women at home, they do need women at the farm, they need, that particular cohort. So they're going to countries like Philippines, Indonesia, and others to just marry because they don't have enough women. It sounds very startling and weird for a minute, but those are the kind of trends. So I just want to share a little story. I don't know how many of you are aware, but I was struck by this. We are all somehow, sometimes, we are against saying, oh, we don't want any preferential treatment. Oh, I don't know why women have to have a quota, or any particular class or caste needs to have a quota. There's always huge debates around it, right? And that becomes very divisive also at times, because you say, oh, this caste versus that class. So you're trying to divide, or are you trying to bring them together? Because you're talking about inclusion while you want diversity. But interestingly, affirmative action, as it's called in the United States or one of the most developed countries, or we call it as reservations in India, they all have one agenda. The agenda is, how do we build in that diversity? So in organizations as well, some of our organizations choose to have a quota system, as it's called by some. That is, you say certain percentage, or this particular position, we want to say at least this percentage of women, or this percentage of physically challenged. Now, why are they doing this? It's almost like forcing it, right? As Ranga's example is like, he was trying to convert a champion or an ally. But the reason it's done is, once it becomes a habit, initially it's resistance, and you're trying to beat it right from the top with either a quota system or reservation, whatever term you give. The example I will share is medical colleges in India. Look back, 35, 40 years ago, all medical colleges across India had a reservation for women to enter into medical schools or colleges, because you didn't have as many women doctors at one point of time in India. Because for gynecology, obstetrics, you can mention multiple other social layers where a lot of them would dread to go to a male doctor, and that's causing a lot of infant mortality. So it's a huge social issue, and hence it was forced. And every medical college by mandate has to bring in 30% women. Today, just go and check. There's not a single medical institution which has reservation any longer for women. What happened? That push, actually, today you have in medical colleges 50% or more women entering into medical colleges through direct admissions or whatever. So that change, the transformation occurred only by a push from the top. And that's exactly what happens in some of the organizations which are proactive, forward-thinking, and they say, oh, today it's a business imperative, as Parvati mentioned. Absolutely. Diversity is a business imperative. So how do we cut through those biases? So it could be by push. Pull is a wonderful one, but not always it works. It takes a much longer period. Hence, the push strategy is what majority of the organizations have chosen, so that they start seeing women entering the workforce. They start at different layers as well. And they also saw people with physical challenges, with various support tools they would have, whether it's visually impaired or auditory challenge, they can go on. All of them were invited through various measures so that they can thrive, they can survive, and so on. Similarly, you found LGBTQ now. That's the other one where we all dread, and it's still a social taboo in large parts of the country. But law has come in, and now organizations are using their enterprise frameworks, if it's a large multinational, because they have their enterprise framework where DEI includes LGBTQ. So all this, so I would put it in a nutshell, Soumya, Parvati, and Ranga, as I looked at it as a 5G in one of the organizations I've been part of, just as we talk about telecom network 5G. So I talked about geographical diversity, which means you don't pick people only from one linguistic, because India has that beauty of diversity with so many states. So geographical diversity, generational diversity, because you do need multi-generational Today, it's become a reality. But initially, there was a lot of resistance from baby boomers and Gen X, looking at Gen Ys or Gen Z and so on. So again, a lot of sensitization required in terms of how do you manage those workforces. So multi-generational workforce, which means generational, then gender, obviously, which is women, then LGBTQ, which I just talked about, where you bring in people with whatever orientation they have, it doesn't matter, but they bring their whole self to work. And most important, which is what we always talked about, along with the diversity of physically challenged or veterans and so on. You touched upon the autism piece, Parvati, but cognitive diversity.
Yeah.
I think most important from a business imperative is each one is so hardwired, very different, very unique, while all are human beings. How do we build in that cognitive diversity? Because cognitive diversity really brings in what we refer to as innovation. Only when there are divergent perspectives can you really innovate and create. So these are the ones which we worked. And there's several examples in terms of how we created a methodology in the Magnus. One is right from the top, as Ranga mentioned, that advocacy and sponsorship needs to be there. And then through the rank and file, the sensitization across the organization to embrace and include, because you can bring them in, but if there is toxic environment or they're not supportive, it's going to fail. So all these interventions have been created in a very strategic, from a talent strategy point of view. And then we've seen and we've measured it. So I will be able to share about it more later, but very happy to.
Thank you very much for those wonderful thoughts. Now, being the devil's advocate, which I love doing, right? So when we talk about diversity and embracing, we all are very welcoming to the same. But then we also would want to, also we as women would love to be celebrated as someone, today is Women's Day. And then I have my male colleagues standing up and saying, well, you give roses to all the women on the Women's Day. What about us? And I said, so there is a Men's Day, in November. So we will celebrate that. No, you keep forgetting about us. We are the underdogs in this organization. So that is what we get to hear. So how do we manage to balance the two pains? And secondly, when we talk about diversity and inclusions, and then we celebrate it by pegging something to like there is quota, fantastic. But to me, the quota should be more on the economical level rather than on the casteism. That's what my thought is. Whether a person is poor, that person should have the rights to education and then go forward, rather than I coming from an IAS background, being from the quota of the so-called quota masters and then getting a privilege somewhere. So just being the devil's advocate, how are organizations, though the organizations which are, the non-government kinds, which are not mandated, but the private sectors, they're still, you don't see the casteism too much. But in the government sector, we do see the quotas. Like we celebrate Women's Day, this is also something that kind of triggers me a little bit. I'm not someone who's going to stand with a jhanda saying that, hey, women liberation zindabad. I'm not one of those. I love to be a woman and in my softness, but this is something which kind of, keeps me thinking that on one side we are talking this and the other side we want to do this. So how do we balance this is my thought. Going back to, I think let's start with Parvati this time.
All right. I think I want to build on two points. I think very, very well said by Kiranmai, and I want to lift on that. One of the reasons that we are seeing so much inclusion of women in medical is because at some point, somebody was brave enough to say, yes, we need a quota. Nobody understood it then, created the space for 2 or 3 women or 5 women or 10 women. The fact that we have people in engineering who have stories like I was the only woman in engineering, in that whole batch. Very, very famously, we have, so many leaders who have been the first in their class. But today we don't think about it because in 3 generations from now, there are so many, right? But it takes generations. It's a very important point. So it's not as if one generation can make the difference. There is enough research that tells us now that it takes 3 generations of educated women in a family in order for that family to rise above poverty substantially, right? And become what we might think of as privileged. So I feel that there is a certain role that affirmative action takes or reservation has in a society that is evolving, and all of this is evolution. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I think, is that, and I'm going to go back to Professor Fry's book, because she herself comes from the LGBTQ community, is representative of that. We have, from a Harvard Business Publishing standpoint, we are invited very often to develop very custom programs for women leadership, right? Whether it is in the world's largest e-commerce company, or whether it is in one of the world's largest manufacturing companies in automobiles, the question on women diversity has become established. Everybody wants a women high potential program because they want, it's not because they're just doing a calendar activity. I have to say, with the intent of the kind of wonderful people I'm working with in the L&D community, they're doing it because they know that if they do this a few times, the space will get created and enough women will take up representation. But I was most delighted when a team that reached out to me said, we want to now do this for our LGBTQ community in the organization globally. I was like, wow, fantastic. What is the size? They said the cohort size will be 20 people. We take a minimum cohort size of 50. But in this case, I'm like, 20 is great because 20 are voices. What are you trying to do? I'm trying to create role models. I'm trying to demonstrate that affirmative action is possible. And then many more people, we hope, will come out and say that, we represent ourselves differently, but we have so much to contribute into the organization. Now, I'm just putting on the lens of a team that does, in my team, we do, customized corporate learning development. But when you give me a slew like that, then I have the ability to think of the same leadership behavior, say it is empathy or it is innovation, but in a very different way because the audience perceiving it very, very different. But here's an organization or a set of organizations willing to contribute to it. So with your permission, I want to just share, because the conversation is so rich, I'll share with you one slide. I don't know, am I allowed to share? Okay, so let me see if I can share just one slide, because I think this framework is a great one for us to discuss. I'm hoping all of you can sort of see my slide. This was the framework, and this is from the book by Frances Fry and Anne Morris. And they call this the inclusion dial. See how simple and insightful it is. And I found it very powerful. Right? What is the inclusion dial? It's not just having people feel safe in the organization. That's in fact level 1 of the inclusion dial, right? Having people feel welcome is the second one. You talked about so well, Soumya, you talked about celebrated. That's in fact on the dial, right? But it's not just it's a Women's Day, let me celebrate the women. No, celebrated employees feel like they have a right to win on that team, right? Because of who, not because of, how they define themselves or whatever, but because their mind and their ability has the capability to help the team really deliver. And they're rewarded for continuing, contributing unique perspectives, contributing to the business, right? You feel celebrated. And the final point in this inclusion dial is to feel cherished. And that's when inside an organization, if an organization has to give itself an assessment, all the leaders do a self-assessment and say, on on the spectrum from safe to cherished, where are we in the organization? Where are we on every single team? Every team leader has the ability to measure it. There is a movement to be done. And for the leaders, that's the movement, right? Okay, I feel like we've reached welcome. We need to go from welcome to celebrated. What will it take? 3 things that I will do differently. Celebrated to cherished. What will I do differently? What is an organization doing differently in order to embrace the diversity that now sits inside the organization and make that your USP, because you have people with so many different experiences coming onto your table to brainstorm your business's biggest problems. And at the end of the day, a business runs in order to have the business thrive, because the business thrives, we thrive, and hopefully if it's a sustainability ESG oriented business, you have the environment thrive as well, right? And so this dial is very important. And I feel that when we have the deeper conversations around what do we need to do, I think it comes down to being able to recognize that there is a movement on the continuum, and each of us is at a different point, and we need to trigger enough thinking inside the organization, enough activity, enough conversation, enough discussions to be able to say, assess where we are and make that movement happen. So that's, I feel, really the route that is really valuable. And we are seeing organizations that are, for example, let's take the Indian environment. Lots of conglomerates are now, seriously professionalizing their business, right? They recognize the power of it. Everybody's talking about it, but they may still early in the spectrum, because they're saying we're only now as a manufacturing organization really starting to say, I have 15% women, I want to get to 45. Great goal. How am I going to do that? Okay, now let me start by welcoming jurists, etc. But there are global organizations that have been on this journey for almost 10 years now, and who are, like I said, saying, can you design a program just for our LGBTQ cohort, because we want to help them. So the spectrum is wide. Every organization is on the spectrum somewhere. Some are not even on the spectrum, so you have a movement to do. But I feel this is the route that many of us will be following.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Parvati, for that wonderful share and the slide. And just to let you know that we have in the manufacturing moved far and beyond embracing. We also have women who were working as prostitutes and on the streets. Their identity is enveloped. We don't disclose their identity. Only me and my recruitment head knows about them. And not even the business owners knows who they are. And there are 30 of such women working with us. So we've got 150, diversity people working with us. We have people with physical abilities, disabilities, whatever you call, or challenges that we can talk of. Now, coming back to all of these are beautiful thoughts that are being shared by everyone. And I would love to hear your thoughts on how do we set the communication strategy. Like, we have ideas with us as leaders, as HR leaders at the C-suite, but how do we communicate to it? And also, how do we create the buy-ins? That is very important, because someone has to adhere and latch and to be glued to the cause, to commit to the cause. Otherwise, these are just beautiful ideas. They will be just, somewhere over there, just for the name of it. So, Ranga, would you want to take this, please? Thank you.
Yes, Soumya. Thank you very much. I think, sir, wonderful thoughts by Parvati and Kiranmay. I like the 5G strategy. So having said that, I think you all know that in 1974, what happened? Sudhamurthy wrote a letter to J.R.D. Tata. I'm a mechanical engineering, and why I'm not getting the job in a shop floor in telco, actually. See, the flip side of the diversity is always existing. But the only thing is that, as we are discussing, the creating awareness among ourselves, of course. And we all know that, today's industry, if you see any organizations, any segment, there are 4 generation people are working. Gen X, maybe grey-haired people, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, and trillennials. I think that's coming up, new terminology coming now. The 5 generation people are working collaboratively. Understand that itself is a big diversity. See, I think, those days have gone, people has to listen from the only top 2 leaders only. Now, today, organizations are also encouraging the young guys who are joining the organization. In fact, I would be happy to share that in my organization, the people who joined as an executive trainee, they spent only 1 year in the organization. Because of the kind of capability and the kind of interest, the inquisitivity they are sharing with the management in the business council meeting, we invited the 2 gentlemen to be part of the annual business plan meeting with the MDs. Meeting MD, I'm talking about the DCM Shriram promoters, like Ajit Shriram, Vikram Shriram, and Ajay Shriram. Meeting those people for these guys very difficult. But we invited those people to be part of the business plan discussion. That itself shows that how organizations are encouraging the capability or diversity. You can say that. See, meeting those people is a big problem, big challenge for them. Number 1. Number 2, I think we have come up with one strategy. Importantly, first of all, we need to have a key stakeholders. So, who are my key stakeholders? One is the senior leaders, of course, HR leaders, diversity council, every function should have, every business unit should have a diversity council and also managers and employees. I think these are the 4 categories of the people has to come with the framework and the DEI initiatives. I'm happy to share that we have come up with one strategy called 4R strategy. What are those 4R strategy? The recruitment, retention, rising, reinforcing. So everyone has to work on these 4 initiatives while coming to the hiring. Tell me how many people are gender diversity are bringing it. Not only gender diversity, as you rightly, one of the geographical challenges. Even in fact, I used to tell my team also, hey, boss, don't get into only Saudi people. So get the people from North, West, East. I don't want to create a lingo. People are discussing only lingo kind of thing. So let us see. It's very good, as you rightly said, Soumya, good to have a good thoughts, but how to implement from the execution level, which is the most important. See, again, I as a leader, should not stop with me. I need to cascade the same thing to the people who are working in the executive level. So what is for them DEA? So they need to bring in different aspect too. So that's why I could able to bring in that element. And this 4R strategy really working. And what we are doing specifically, enhance the proportion of the female employees by introducing CFT, cross-functional teams. So instead of only supporting in sales and marketing, we want to bring in the cross-functional teams also. And diversify the selection of the campus sites. Instead of hiring 10 people budget you have, get 5 people at least should female employees, 40% of the people. And reference scheme. This is one of the things I think we all know, that employer referral scheme. But we specifically mentioned people who refer female candidates. I want to give a bonus to you, a referral bonus to you. So it excites the male candidates also. So that's what I'm trying to say. You have to bring in I'm getting goosebumps actually. You have to create the awareness and need to be part of the, the DEI initiative. So how I impact? See, for me, DEI is an organization or a big organization, big strategy is okay. But I as an individual employee, how do I contribute? How do I contribute? If I refer 2 female employees, I'm contributing my DEI strategy. Okay. Number 4 is that promoting women employees, into people managers. It's very easy to hire people at the front line, second line. But tell me, how do I ensure that moving these people from mid-level to the, senior leadership or leadership level? So I want to create a platform where I need to mentor these people. I need to create a career progression people separately, very customized program, not a generic program kind of thing. So people, women employees should feel that, yes, there is a career program for me. There's a ladder for me to grow forward, move forward. I think that's one more thing. And getting stories from the female employees about their work experience. I think let us see the testimony of the people. I'm working with the organization for more than 10 years. I worked in different organizations. Today I'm leading this role. I think this is the way. See, one thing, we are creating a lot of awareness among the front line, second line, third line people. So how they're contributing. If I'm sharing the stories on social media, on with employees also, they also feel that they also will be inspired. Oh, let me also share my story. Believe me, when I started this storytelling to the, last 6 months, now female employees are coming, sir, when are you going to publish my story? See, and other functions also asking, Ranga, I have 2 female members. They also want to share their stories. See, that is where you are making every employee to part of this DEA bigger initiative of the organization. So that's why, last but not least, that's why we're calling as the entire initiative as WIDE, WIDE. We are inclusive, diverse, and equitable. That's what I can say.
Beautiful thoughts, Ranga. And it's so good when you get goosebumps for the cause that you believe in, you being genuine and honest, and you really are feeling for the cause. So our hearts and hugs to you for doing it so wonderfully well. Kudos to you. So going back to Kiranmai on this, that it is beautifully articulated by Parvati and Ranga about, how to bring in this culture and the dial. Beautiful wordings. Now, how do we include accountability? What happened, I'll tell you, is that people usually in the sales, sales manager, I think Ranga or Parvati, someone pointed that out, say that we don't want females in the sales force. So I asked, why? What's the problem? अरे मैडम बहुत रोती हैं, टारगेट्स नहीं कर पाती, फिर रोने लगती है. So I'm like, अरे so what? नहीं भाई मेरे को रोने वाला नहीं चाहिए, मैं तो काम कराने वाला हूँ. So I said, you want to be a hard task master, but you can still, women can as well equally do it. So in that context, I shared a beautiful excerpt from the interview of Indra Nui ji. And she mentioned there, हाँ मैं रोती हूँ जब मुझे रोना होता है. I would ask my secretary to close the door, and I would cry, and I would tell her, don't allow anyone to enter for 15 minutes. And that made me think, we all are human beings without our designations, and that need to be celebrated more than anything else. So Parvati, so Kiran, your thoughts on that, that how do we bring in this culture of accountability, yet, embracing the very beautiful factor of empathy, when we talk about D&I culture. So your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So what you touched upon is vulnerability. And we talk about authentic leaders are always unhesitant to show their vulnerabilities. So now talking about that, what gets measured is what gets done. All of us know that's a simplistic nuance. So if we want to embrace DEI, I mean, all these need not be only on posters or on certain days we celebrate and we say, oh, we also have diversity. That's not the tokenism we want to really touch upon. So if we want to go beyond window dressing, beyond tokenism, I think what organizations have been striving and working, there's some wonderful examples shared by both Parvati and Ranga. What we have done, I'll share two examples. In one example, I'll touch upon the sales piece. This is a multinational Fortune 100 company I was working for. And one of the areas where we thought diversity is totally lacking was Salesforce. So women were non-existent. And that's when we designed a program where it was right from the top, and we made one of the executive leaders as a sponsor. And we created awareness across the organization saying this is the gap and this is a felt need. We talked about business statistics. We published that internally, talked about which regions where we do not have, and so on. And then we created what we refer to as a mentorship. We brought in cross-functional leaders, senior leaders to mentor and buddy with young women who entered the workforce to join the sales team. And the rewarding results, I think once we started publishing those, that itself was a huge trigger for others to embrace and champion and say, we want women, we will embrace. So it just turned on its head. And within 5 years, a region like Europe also didn't have women, by the way, because it was hard technology product selling and they were not willing to travel across Europe. Yeah. And that's what we brought in, and it changed. So that's one story where with data and with measurement and with very clear strategy, we were able to move from 0 to 15% of women in leadership positions in sales. And now the other one which I'm going to share is we created allyship and championship as a strategy. Today we talk about it. I mean, this was non-existent, 10 years ago when we were talking about the industry. So what we've done is we looked at each of the leaders, the verticals, and within that, there is always a people. Just as you have a financial goal, you also have a people goal. So for the people goal, we added a measure, and we clearly attached a percentage weightage for all the people managers to ensure that they grow diversity in their team, right from acquiring talent to retaining talent, which is what Ranga was talking in his 4R strategy, as well as growing them. So what is the investment with L&D initiatives to grow them, to help them succeed? And what's the percentage we gave that pyramid or the funnel? And we said, okay, right from, the bottom of the pyramid to what is the percentage improvement in each of yours? And then we also talked about individual contributors, the dual career ladder, as well as people managers. We said, we want you to, grow, not just women. Of course, we talked about it's an all-encompassing one. And we also talked about something very critical for the organization, which is patents or innovation. So we said, we see fewer women really filing for patents. So what are we going to do? We created the ecosystem that supported, and in fact, we won several awards for this in the organization I was steering this and leading. And it really showed phenomenal results. So the moment the focus was there and everyone knows that they're being watched and measured, suddenly we found there are numerous champions and allies for the cause. And we have seen the organization transformation within a 5-year period where we had more than, from 10% women in mid-layer to 40% women in the mid-layers. So that is phenomenal.
Awesome.
And where we had only about 2% of patents filed by women employees, we found it to grow to 20% of women filing for patents. So I will stop there in terms of the data. That should tell you it was phenomenal. So all the efforts made, the strategic initiatives, and the ownership and accountability, which you talked about, Soumya, came in because we plugged it in the goal stage itself, and it was cascaded right from the top.
Beautiful. Thank you so much to all my panel members for wonderful thoughts, just summarizing it, because I have Andy on the queue there. So summarizing it, and it is something that is an organization's, commitment to the cause. It is not an individual commitment. You have to create role models as future leaders who will certainly follow it. I loved the dial piece that was shared by Parvati, loved the 5G that was shared by Kiranmay, and of course the 4R shared by Ranga. Thank you so much. Just to end it all, by a line by Robert Frost, which said that 2 roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you to wonderful panel members. Thank you to beautiful, thought sharing on this platform. Over to you, Andy, and thank you to PeopleFirst. Yes, I couldn't go beyond, without thanking you all. Thank you, Andy. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soumya. It seems we had a surprise musical interlude during our introduction. So if we can just hit rewind and quickly reintroduce our panelists to you once again. Just very quickly, our first panelist was Ms. Parvati Menon. As Principal Learning Partner with Harvard Business Publishing, she designs leadership learning journeys and has founded Innovation Alchemy Consulting and Fresh Harvest Private Limited. Parvati also chairs the board for the School for Social Entrepreneurs in India. Thank you so much once again, Parvati. Also, we had Ms. IVS Ranganath, an award-winning HR leader with over 20 years of experience. He heads HR at Shriram Bioseed Genetics and is recognized as a top 100 HR leader. Once again, thank you, IVS. Next, we have Dr. Kiranmay Pendyala, an esteemed HR leader and academic. She excels in global HR operations and change management. Once again, Dr. Kiranmay, thank you for joining us on this virtual stage. And finally, our moderator for this panel discussion is Dr. Soumya Bhatgayan, VP of HR Business Strategy at Gold Star Jewelry Private Limited. She has about 20 years in experience in HR. She brings expertise in organizational transformation and digital initiatives. So thank you once again for this panel discussion. It was very, very insightful. In fact, I'd like to even summarize some of the key points that were highlighted, that diversity encompasses behavioral and thought patterns as well. While diversity is a common topic, real progress is hindered by structural barriers. And it's crucial to address these barriers rather than treating diversity as a mere checkbox activity. All right.